Hey everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the tools and materials that you might need before you start a conversion kit from diecastdv.com. I wanted to preface this by saying that most of these mediums that I've chosen are completely optional, right? If you feel like you don't want to use something and you want to try something different, by all means go for it. This is just from my experience, the things that I've used, and I've narrowed down into my own personal projects, right? So certainly feel free to modify or tweak some of the things that you personally end up using. But yeah, just to get started, very basic material or tool here that I use is some precision pliers. Use these to guide a lot of the LED wires into the VS of the PCB. It's very hard to do it with your fingers, especially having fingers that will block those VS, and it's hard to tell if you actually went in or not. So precision pliers help with doing that, and overall just help you move and tweak things around in places where your fingers might be too big. And of course, die casts themselves are very small, so that will be very useful tool to have around. Another key tool that I like having around is flush cuts. Not flesh cuts, flush cuts. So these ones I use to strip some of the insulation of the LED wires. Oftentimes I might not even strip any of the insulation and just end up using the solder iron to burn that insulation off in the parts that I need. But it does come in handy. I do use it to trim a lot of the plastic pieces in the die cast if I need to make room for the PCB board. So very handy to have. Moving on to another tool here. So I like having an electric drill around with a variety of bit sizes. So this is very good to have, especially for opening up the die cast and drilling out the rivets, and also drilling out the holes for the headlights that you'll be putting in. I like to keep a taper bit specifically to drill out the bottom of the die cast. It leaves it nice and clean. I actually used it for this one, and as you can tell, it's very clean, right? So it lets you manage how thick and how wide you want that hole to be, and then also move it up and down and make it a very nice looking oval shape, instead of trying to mimic that with normal bits. So I like having this for that reason. You certainly don't need to have this. You could get away with just the normal bits, but I think this is a good one to have. And then, of course, a solder iron. To be honest, a lot of people assume that they need to buy the most expensive one. This brand is called Pine Sol. It's pine cone and pencil put together, Pine Sol. I'll put a link in the description. Super cheap. I think as of May 2025, it's still sitting around $25-26. You do need to buy the power cord separate, so that probably will end up being more expensive than the solder iron itself, but super great beginner tool. And as a matter of fact, as an electrical engineer and an electrical hobbyist, this is the only solder iron that I have in my household. Not to say others aren't great, I just don't see the need to buy some that are excessively expensive for just at-home hobbyist. So all those other ones are great for extended periods of use, and certainly manufacturing or high use scenarios, but this is perfectly fine for a hobbyist, and super cheap, great starting tool. And of course, solder iron. Just be sure you get the SN63 PB37 variety of solder. This is, you don't want to use any of the other ones. They're for very specific uses. So this is a very general one, and works for this type of project. And then last but not least, UV resin. I've used various other mediums, and I have not liked anything else better than I've liked UV resin. So I mean, I've tried hot glue, I've tried normal resin, and they just have their own complications. UV resin is super quick at bonding, and it helps you get the project done nice and quick, and it looks great. So I've used this specific brand for 10 different builds, and I think I'm about halfway through. So with a lot of wasted resin, probably. If I could have made this last longer if I really wanted to, but yeah, so right now I'd say easily this works for about 10 builds, 10 to 20 builds easily. And yeah, so super great. Personal preference though, feel free to use another medium for gluing if you would like. And then some of the other tools that I have but I don't use on every build are just some generic files. These are to shave off some additional portions of plastic, to make components fit better, like the PCB and things like that, or even to just clean up edges after I've drilled something out. If there's some leftover metal shavings or plastic shavings, then I clean it off with these. I also like having a manual drill. I don't even know if this is called a drill, but a manual, yeah, I think it's called a drill. Yeah, just a manual drill set. So it has a bunch of these similar bits that you can put into this component here. So as you rotate it, it clamps down onto them. So I use this a lot for vehicles that are very round, and I need to have some pilot holes, because with the electric drill it's hard to line up the hole and not cause damage to the rest of the paint. So a lot of times I'll start off the drilling with just manually drilling it very carefully, and then once I have a pilot dent or hole, then I'll go through with the electric drill and drill the rest of it out. So I don't always use it, but it does come in handy from time to time, especially also if you need to drill any of the plastic pieces. This will drill through it super quickly, super controlled. So certainly would recommend having it. Not insanely necessary, but good to have. And then last but not least, the rivets that are drilled out, I have put the vehicles back together in two methods. One is using the UV resin itself and just bonding UV resin instead of the rivet that would have existed at the bottom of these. I've moved away from that since then because it was never very durable. A lot of times they would separate after some time. But also it didn't allow me to open it back up if I needed to make a change. So I've moved away from using the resin to put it back together at the end and make sure that this chassis piece is attached properly. Instead, what I've done is once the rivet is out, you'll have a little extrusion of aluminum left. So I'll drill a hole with my drill bits, and then use this tool to tap that hole. And then after it's tapped, then I can just put a screw in there, and I can always, use whatever screwdriver I have available to remove it and open the whole die cast back up if I wanted to. So certainly handy to have one of these. Again, not super necessary. If you want to just figure out a way to glue everything back together, you totally can. For my specific use, I wanted to be able to handle them more and be a little bit more reliable. So I've moved to tapping a hole and using small screws. So that's all the tools that I use. There might be other things that I might use from time to time, but it's certainly not common. This is needed for these tools. Most of these tools I use for 90% of the build. So, and of course, if I end up finding something better or switch around to other materials, I'll keep you guys updated and let you know. But yeah, so far this has worked great for me, and I think it's a great starting point for anybody who's wanting to start this hobby. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.